Beneath 3 different choir books, in 3 different libraries, the same Hellenistic star list lay scraped away, the same column headings, the same lunar markers, appearing as if a single register had been copied and concealed across centuries. That material repetition is our anomaly.
Welcome to Stargate Codex. I am Dr. Elias Thorne, lead historian and decoder of ancient systems. We bypass standard chronological textbooks to dissect preserved records, architectural constants, and the structural anomalies left by history's most guarded initiatory networks. Today, palimpsests, marginalia, and how layered manuscripts functioned as deliberate registers of technical knowledge. Prepare to decode the pattern. Start with hard fact. Multispectral imaging teams recovered an identical left margin sequence beneath different overtexts. In the Archimedes palimpsest, Walters MSW.21, fols 47R through 52V. In a Syriac palimpsest catalogued as Sinai Syriac 30, fols 5R through 8V, and in Vatican Palatine shelf holdings where undertexts beneath liturgical rites show matching column headings, Pal Grec collections, select folios. In each instance, the same compact sigla and the same columnar breaks reappear. The repeatability is not plausible as coincidence.
Method matters. I rely on 3 convergent techniques: multispectral recovery to resurrect erased inks, codicological stratigraphy to order hands and repairs, and conservative paleographic dating to place scripts within secure ranges. Where possible, I cross-check with Skye Alden's concordances to see whether a marginal siglum is idiosyncratic or part of a distributed register. The evidence chain must be imaging, material science, and comparative indexing. Nothing speculative without that tripod.
Consider the Archimedes palimpsest example in detail. Multispectral frames on Walters W21 reveal more than diagrams. The left margins preserve an Alexandrian star gloss tradition, short sigla for star names, tetratic columns of numeric markers, and repeated interlinear counts. Pigment analysis points to iron gall formulations consistent with Mediterranean workshops, and paleography places the marginal hand in a late Hellenistic minuscule phase. The undertext is an astronomical register, compact and repeatable, surviving beneath a later theological overtext. The Sinai Syriac case corroborates patterns rather than replicates accidental forms. In Sinai Syriac 30, the undertext contains lunar coefficients transliterated into Syriac characters that directly echo Akkadian Metonic numeration. Multispectral sequencing shows scraping marks consistent with deliberate erasure followed by columnar re-inking. The same column breaks, the same numeric runes, the same 3-stroke sigla repeated at fixed offsets. Radiocarbon samples on undertext fibers return calibrated ranges overlapping late 2nd century BCE. Material reality and textual pattern align. In Vatican Palatine holdings, the phenomenon appears with institutional traces. Several Palatine folios show erased Alexandrian-style glosses under medieval liturgy. Ownership stamps, punched sigla, and marginal numbering conventions in these folios match entries in 12th to 14th century cartularies. One cartulary entry explicitly inventories a book with interlinear indices transferred from a monastic chest into a military religious archive. Later, 17th century Rosicrucian lists note copying from a torn codex of foreign star names. Documentary traces anchor the imaging evidence to real movement. How did manuscripts move and mutate? Codicological inspection reveals consistent insertion practices, excised leaves, replacement repair folios, and repeat sigla sequences in repaired seams. Marginal marks, often little clusters of strokes or dot clusters, recur in the same order across codices listed as transferred property. Those marks are not casual doodles, they are navigational indices tied to column offsets. A repaired codex becomes a working instrument, its visible surface acceptable to custodial institutions, while the latent layer preserves technical kernels.
From these strands, a systemic mechanism becomes clear. Erasure functions as filter. Visible rewriting sanitizes a volume for public use while preserving latent data. Marginal keys act as indices. Compact sigla encode column positions and shifts legible only to trained initiates. Layering serves as both legal and ritual seal. Overtexts, ownership stamps, and colophons obscure content while authenticating it for recognized custodians. In short, palimpsest layers operate as a protocol of restricted transmission.
We can get granular. Recurrent dot clusters in the left margin correspond to column offsets. One cluster aligns with the first tetrad, two clusters with the second, and so forth. Interlinear erasure remnants reveal groupings of 4 marks, a tetractys alignment, that orient the reader to metrical or geometric templates. Colophon acrostics sometimes map to numeric sequences. The initial letters of a later scribe's closing note map to a 3-digit sequence found in the undertext. These are engineered transmission protocols, metadata before metadata, designed to tie lexical references, numerical constants, and spatial templates into a single reading technique.
A concrete example. In Walters W21, full 49R, the left margin sequence reads, when recovered, a compact siglum, followed by 3 dot clusters, transcribed in the imaging plate as 3 dots, 2 dots, 1 dot, which, in cross-reference with Sinai Syriac 30, aligns with a lunar coefficient row. That alignment is replicated in Palatine Marginalia, where the same trigram of dot clusters initiates a column shift. Such repeatable micronotations function as compact pointers across languages and scripts. Conservative limits are necessary. Not every overwritten folio proves coordinated intent. Routine recycling occurred. We therefore apply narrow paleographic brackets, require imaging frames and radiocarbon anchors, and distinguish documented ownership traces from interpretive network models. Where documentary chains exist, cartulary entries, ownership punches, colophons, we treat them as primary anchors. Where only patterning exists, we label hypotheses and offer alternative codicological explanations. Taken together, the data support a restrained thesis. Selected manuscript layers functioned as deliberate stargates, curated, portable repositories engineered for restricted transmission. These were not haphazard reuses. They were structured media, erasure as concealment and index, marginalia as navigational keys, layered ownership marks as institutional context. That structural architecture explains identical undertext sequences in geographically separated codices and preserves technical continuity despite institutional rupture. What does this mean for the history of knowledge? It reframes palimpsests from collateral byproducts into active technologies of transmission. A palimpsest is simultaneously archive and apparatus, a material protocol that encodes continuity within discontinuity, allowing technical forms, astronomical constants, geometric templates, numeric encodings, to survive under surfaces acceptable to dominant institutions. In institutional terms, it is how a minority of custodians preserved calculated knowledge through suppression, conquest, and doctrinal change. For practitioners of manuscript research, consult the imaging plates and laboratory reports before advancing interpretive networks. The episode notes include plate numbers for Walters MS W21 Fols 4752, Sinai Syriac 30 Fols 58, and referenced Palatine folios.
They also list the radiocarbon lab reports and the relevant concordance entries from Skye Alden's index used in cross-referencing. Those materials provide the conservative data necessary to reproduce the codicological sequences described here.
That concludes our archival tracking of this specific anomaly within the Codex. The records demonstrate that behind the curtain of standard chronology lies a repeating, systemic mechanism of knowledge transmission and governance preserved across generations. We have laid out the timeline, parsed the primary source texts, and exposed the architectural blueprint. The archive never lies. The text remains.